In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found NoPro.
You have indeed found NoPro, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 400. Oh yeah. This week we are marking a big anniversary, and we're joined by NoPro team members Allie Marotta, our New York curator, our LA Reviews editor Kevin Gossett, Patrick McLean, our Chicago curator, our New England curator Leah Davis, Laura Hess, our arts editor, and Parker Sela, the associate producer of this very podcast. Yes, it's a team episode, this time delving into a bit of origin stories and a snapshot of where Immersive is at this moment in time. In fact, we went up kicking off some questions that we'll have to come around and answer in another format. Just real quick, and I did a version of this and then scrapped it. It used to be that I would do the rant at the beginning of the show, and then I moved it to I think we're on episode 50 or maybe episode 100, probably closer to 50, to the end of the show. I just want to make a note of sort of an overarching theme that's happening right now in a lot of the op-ed writing I'm doing, which is there are folks, and have always been folks, who want to bury immersive as a term. And my sense of that is always just, what a waste of time. The term is useful, because it does describe a subjective experience that audiences have and that can be designed for in order to give them a deeper connection to a story world, a theme, an idea, a method of giving people agency so they can create a story alongside the people who have built the tools for them. I feel that this work is kind of a teleological endpoint. I used to describe Immersive as sort of the reigning queen of the arts, because much like opera before it, it is a form of total work. It brings together all these disciplines and puts it all into one very contentious container. I know that given artists, given creators, might play with Immersive for a while, get bored with it, want to put it down and move on, and then declare it over. And it is for them. But I look around the world we have right now, and even with some of the larger pieces having their season and then moving off the stage, such is the way with a lot of art. It's ephemeral in nature. Not everything sticks around for an incredibly long time. But as a culture, we keep coming back to this form. You're going to hear about something later, not for too long. You're going to hear about something later in this show that I learned about this week that was going on when I was in high school, that if I had known about and could have gotten to, I would have lost my mind for once upon a time. And indeed, there are plenty of works over the last few decades that we would now call immersive that we weren't using that term for before. What's been happening over the 8 years that we've been doing this show is that more people are picking up the tools and finding new ways to use them, and more importantly, creating new ways for people to build stories alongside them. For folks to make their own meaning out of the material that's given and entrusted to them. This is something I'm incredibly excited about. And it's something that I'm incredibly exciting to get to teach. I teased this a little in previous episodes. I'm going to be teaching at CalArts in the fall. The member of the theater department there invited me in. I'll be teaching a class called Centering the Audience, Immersive Design. The students will be making their own pieces. I'll be helping to guide that process. I'm incredibly excited to be working in that mode again. It'll be my first college class that I've taught, but I have been teaching people since I was 16 years old. So not my first rodeo, but definitely the biggest rodeo I've been a part of, and working in exactly the medium that means the most to me. And I'm so looking forward to what I'm going to learn by teaching. I've always learned so much by teaching, and I'm really, really looking forward to what we're going to discover as we explore there. And then in the spring, there's a plan around teaching a history course. Not just looking at the last 10 years, but indeed looking back at the last few decades. And that's another reason why I'm got my eyes open and my ears tuning into all the different kinds of work that's happened in the past few decades that we would now recognize as part of this. This is why I am so unfazed when people, because they always have since the start of the show, when they want to go, well, Immersive's done. You know, there was Sleep No More, but well, now it's done. Well, there was all those marketing things at South by Southwest. Well, VR's over already. Well, Disney did it in the theme parks and it didn't work the same. Well, and that just keeps happening over and over again. Well, this happened, but, you know, it's done now. You know, we moved on. Alternate reality games over. Escape rooms are a fad. All of this stuff, it just denies the fundamental truth that we keep coming back to this over and over and over again. And the more people who are initiated into it, the more who want to take a crack at making it, and the more people who want to play. Does not mean, and will never mean, that this becomes the dominant form of art or entertainment. That's video games. And if you want that, no. But even there, what's beautiful about this form is that it is a unique way of bringing together different artistic disciplines and sharing in a Promethean fashion some of the power of the art with the audience and seeing where that takes them and where it takes you. And those artists who keep exploring immersive, what courage they show to hand over some of the fire they stole and hand it to the people that they first thought they were trying to entertain or enlighten, and instead find themselves being illuminated by them. Much as in the same way that I'm looking forward to being illuminated by the students. So there you go. Sometimes when I do this one, I like to say the state of immersive is strong. But I don't need to say that, because that's like saying water is wet and gravity makes things draw close to each other. Immersive just is. It is one of the endpoints of artistic practice. There you go. one of the endpoints of that's a bad transition. I'm going to keep it though. Look, the endpoints of this part of the podcast is usually me doing the Patreon bit. Now here I'm going to do the Patreon bit, right? So our latest backer is James Laver, whose $5 a month pledge is keeping us in the fight to carry on this mission. We did have we had a sustaining backer that was sort of a 1 month sustaining backer. They're gone now, so the big numbers shrunk back down. This was a known thing. This was expected. Doesn't mean we don't need more backers, though. That's another reason why. The $5 a month level, specifically the $5 a month level, not like the stuff that just comes in monthly. That is the sweet spot for us, right? Like, keep that stuff flowing in. Hit up patreon.com/NoProscenium. That powers the podcast, powers the websites. I mean, literally pays the bills. For both NoPro and everything immersive. It gets you access to our member-only Discord, which is warming up this summer. It's really, things are starting to pop off. I got to be in there more often. Plenty of people are. You're going to find a whole community of creators and fans there, as well as regular real-time chats. And we're stirring up some AMAs and some book club action coming up later this season. There's a book where all of us are kind of informally book clubbing right now, though we're not getting together to talk about it. That book being Hyper Reality, The Art of Designing Impossible Experiences. That's by one Curtis Hickman, one of the co-founders of The Void. And let me tell you, I've been reading this book, and I'm just absolutely loving how much it's codified in here. And if you wanted to know some of how they pulled off all the stuff in The Void, well, there you go. And we're going to have Curtis on the show, and I think we're going to manage to get Curtis into the Discord and do some talking. I said I think. We haven't locked it down yet, but no full promises, but I'm working hard. I really want it to happen for us. So keep an eye out for that if you're already in there. If you are a backer, do link your Patreon account to the Discord, drop a review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. You can tell when I move back to the reading. And share the articles you find useful on your social media platform of choice. It helps immensely. We're always No Proscenium, except on Insta and on Threads, where we are _Proscenium. There's another bit that I have to scratch out of the usual bit. As always, one more thing before we're to the all the Patreon backers. Look, this show, in a sense, from a certain point of view, and I love my certain points of view, is powered by our friends at Yes Please Coffee. They were one of the backers of the Next Stage Summit. Tonks and company provided all the coffee that we drank there, and I wanted to do a solid. Tony's a dear friend of mine. We were having coffee on Saturday. It's what we do. We get together and talk and over coffee. It's like it's our thing. And we got to talking, and I was just like, look, what can I do to get people into your camp? So Tony's given us a promo code. So if you use NoPro Yes Please, so and Yes Please is PLZ, right? I'll put it in the show notes. That gets you 25% off your first purchase of any bag of Yes Please beans. The code isn't case sensitive. It applies to both subscriptions for first shipment and to one-time purchases. Not getting promotional consideration for this, although I did say, hey, if I can get you X number of people, then you got to give me free coffee. But I'm not saying what that X number is, and I'd be buying the coffee anyway, so don't worry about that. I just wanted to share something that I love with you, much like all the immersive stuff. So there you go. It'll be in the show notes, and you'll hear it every week. But big shout outs to our friends at Yes Please, and use that code NoPro Yes Please. I don't do a lot of copy reading here, to get your 25% off discount. It's good coffee. It powers me. If I don't sound like I'm on it right now, it's because I'm recording this at 11:37 at night, and I'm tired because it's worn off because I haven't had it in many an hour. And I can't drink some right now. I'll be up till this time tomorrow. All right. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers, Samuel Mystery, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentes, Tom Leonetti McGuire, Kurt Collins, Win Thorne, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hands-On, Lecker LeCool, the Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. As always, if you're looking to help us out, we're always on the lookout for special deals for our community, like what we just got from Yes Please, or tickets to shows, etc., etc. Hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com. Work out a deal, and the door is open. And with that, very, very long intro. Told you the rant at the start this time. We get into episode 400. As you heard in the cold open, this is the 400th episode of the show, which means we've been doing this, the podcast, I guess, just under 8 years, just exactly. I don't know. It's been a long time, and math, not my strong suit. That's why I'm in the arts entertainment field. Joining us today are 6 of the team members from NoPro. I'm going to introduce them one at a time and give everyone a chance to hook on to their voices. Not too long ago, you heard this next voice. That would be Parker Sela, the associate producer of the podcast, who recently co-hosted.
Hey, how's it going? I'm back and I'm excited.
Right before that, hosting the show was Patrick McLean.
Yep, and I'm here too to chat everyone's ears off.
Coming to us from somewhere in New England is Leah Davis.
Hi. You know, when you want us to make our voices be heard, I want to do a voice like this.
Special.
But no, this is me.
In your register, you kind of did a voice. You did a bit.
Oh gosh.
It's okay. You're a LARPer. You're allowed to do bits.
Hey! Don't out me.
Sorry. Okay, that's been hidden again. Okay, I gotta get these updates. On the other side of Los Angeles, from me, well, there's 2 people on the other side of Los Angeles. That only narrows it down. There's one of 2 people who's going to go next. This one was recently across the pond. That would be Laura Hess.
Okay, now I'm really resisting the urge to do my Muppet voice, but we'll save that for some other time.
Yeah, this is not a team meeting. We're not doing Muppets on this one. All right. Also, if we did Muppets, I think we'd get sued. We have to do Puppet Americans. Only Puppet Americans. If you know what that's reference to, then you get the same Instagram ads that I do here in Los Angeles. Gonna fly over to New York real quick for our NYC curator, Allie.
Hey, this is Allie, and I didn't get the memo to prepare a bit.
There was no memo to prepare a bit, so don't worry about it. The group
this just happens.
The group just stays prepared at all times for bits. Which brings us finally to our LA Reviews editor, who's on the other side of Los Angeles from me, because I'm kind of in the middle. That'd be Kevin Gossett.
Hey everyone, this is Kevin. Laura beat me to the special After Dark Muppets episode joke, so oh well.
There we go. All right, so I've brought you all here today to reminisce, because, like I said, it's been a long time, and we always do this on the big numbered episodes, which we get to do like every other year, because that's how math and time works. Leah, I'm going to start with you, if only because when I was pitching this around to everybody, you actually started answering the question. So I figure you're kind of maybe ready to go. So I want to get everyone's origin story. But the idea here isn't like, rocketed from a doomed planet, crash landed into the McKittrick and was raised by actors. No, it's not that kind of origin story. I want to know more the actorly moment before. What were you doing before Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem here lured you on to the never-ending tour that is No Proscenium?
I was already a groupie. Can I say that?
Sure.
Well, I mean, what I mean is, I had been going to Sleep No More. I'd been going to Then She Fell. I'd discovered Queen of the Night. I'd been just hoovering up any amount of immersive that I could find without really knowing what it was at first. And I think eventually the people in my life were just so sick of me talking about it all the time. And I had big ideas that I needed to share. So I went looking for people who would let me share them. And when I first approached Noah and Catherine at the time, that was them. They gave me a bit of a platform, and recognized my my deep experience here. But mostly they just let me scratch the itch, talk about something that I care about deeply.
All right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then I got rocketed into the McKittrick and Raised by Actors after that.
Okay, yeah, no. Oh, you hadn't gone. No, I'm kidding. Kevin, how about you? Because like I feel like your origin story also like ties into like the halcyon days of LA's immersive scene.
Yeah. So the origin of my origin story is obviously Sleep No More, Then She Fell, and then I kind of came back to LA and was like, what is around here? And I found Tension, and that was kind of my access point into the wider immersive LA community. And I kind of banged around for a little bit, had done some writing, and then was looking for like a deep dive piece that I pitched to you, and then that's how I got started. But then naturally my first piece was like a little photo, or whatever those ones are called anymore, and that was the first piece I published. It was not like my deep dive, it was just it's like a 90s Nick at Night themed thing.
Did we ever do the deep dive, or is that still sitting on a draft somewhere?
It was Rochester 96.
Okay, yeah. Oh my god, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yep.
Parker, you've been behind the scenes for a long time, and I bet that others don't know like your moment before.
This is true. Behind the scenes is my happy spot. I found my way into the sort of, the tunnels underneath NoPro, for lack of a better term, just in
Disney's Laundryland.
Exactly, in the deep depths of the early pandemic, and just before that, I was, and I say this with my best pretentious white girl voice, I was studying abroad in London, which is very cool. And I stumbled into Parabolic's Bridge Command and was just sort of adopted by the other audience members at that show, and they swept me off to a bunch of other immersive shows in the area. And that was when I really got my first glimpse into the fact that there was community in immersive theater, and it wasn't just me, slamming my head into walls trying to find other people who were into the same thing. And they led me into No Proscenium as well.
So the Londoners, this is the part that always that freaks me out, but I'm always both tickled and sort of terrified about the fact that the London people, I think at one point Shelley was telling me, our London curator, it wasn't Shelley who said it, but someone was asking someone else, well, what's the equivalent of No Proscenium in London? And someone said No Proscenium, right? That's the thing over there, which is odd to me. If only because, I was raised in American public media. So thinking of, I just assumed there'd be the BBC version of us somewhere, or maybe the Spider-Punk version of us somewhere. That'd be cooler. Laura, I feel like early pandemic era is also sort of when part of your tale here about your moment before with NoPro, because we didn't get to meet in person until mid 2022 or something.
Yeah, it's really I mean, I know it's actually common for a lot of people, but it's also such a surreal experience. Yeah. I mean, my origin story is I had a theatrical, still do have a theatrical background, and then I wound up working in film, a little bit of VR, experiential marketing, but throughout, and definitely had a seminal Sleep No More initiation moment. But I think for me, actually, the real through line was installation art. that was something that I don't have a formal education in. It was something that for a long time I was just going and doing on my own wherever I could find it. And it was something that I did just out of pure enjoyment and curiosity. And then especially starting to see, when I was working in experiential marketing, starting to see some of the parallels and overlap from a theatrical standpoint, and seeing where people were trying to kind of push the envelope a little bit. And I'd been working for an art and culture consulting firm that had was specializing in public art, and it just felt like here's all these disparate things that, not that there's no overlap, people were already trying to innovate and to kind of create these hybrid models. But I was like, oh, I felt like I was doing all these things separately, and I was definitely longing and looking for a place and people where we were talking about all of this, and people were creating experiential works that were really new and interesting and exciting. So I definitely kind of was like, oh, I have found you. Thank you.
Awesome.
But then we were all in isolation.
You roped into being like the arts editor. Now we send you to all the installation art you can possibly stand.
No, that's what I wanted. I was, I was going for it. So, but it is nice to actually be able to see people in person now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Patrick.
Yeah, and I feel bad going. I think I'm last because.
Nope.
Oh, good. So, because I'm going to be an Eeyore about this, because I was definitely right before joining up with No Proscenium, was very kind of lost creatively. I've been trying to get work done in very traditional senses through traditional avenues of like theater and film and performance, and in reconnecting with an old professor of mine. Hey, Dean, he's probably in the car on the commute right now listening to this. He is with part of a group called Birch House Immersive, who does work here in Chicago, and to, have that Kittrick X moment of like getting up out of a seat and moving about and engaging in a unique space in a way, because they did it at a park space that has a really cool, like old historic mansion. And it was just inspiring, and it was just engaging, and it moved me in a way we hadn't. And furthermore, Dean then was like, have you been listening to this podcast called No Proscenium? And literally, I think 2 episodes after starting to listen, Noah, you put out a call out for more like help. And I'm like, what do I have to lose? And then I think setting up a further tradition.
Yeah.
And setting up a tradition of, because I'm pretty sure we just talked about Star Wars role-playing games for most of my interview.
Entirely possible. I mean, I'm eyeing, as always, I'm eyeing your bookshelf, and I'm like, oh, do I have that? Do I have that? Oh, what's been added? Oh, those are some High Republic books. We haven't talked about that yet. Yeah. And he's nodding because I'm correct, because I can see. And they're not even up close. They're far. They're a few feet behind him, and I know exactly which book is where, and I have not been in his. Anyway, it's my psychic ability.
That's not creepy at all.
It's because it looks like my bookshelf. That's why I know.
Yeah, I've spotted the Sandman collection on your bookshelf the one time. I'm like, oh, there it is, top shelf in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize those spines.
Yeah, it's moved now. It's now it's somewhere else at the moment, but it's still there. It's still prominent. Anyway, yeah, that's what Patrick and I do all the time, to everyone's chagrin. I saved Allie for last because we get to hear Allie like not all that often, and also it's either Allie or Kevin who's been with us the longest. I can't, like, both of you have been with us for so long. I just literally just don't even think of No Proscenium as existing without either of you as part of it, even though I do know what era. Guess who hasn't been to the Taylor Swift show, guys? I know which era that that you're from. You should have seen the groans on everyone's faces. It was awesome. It's like, that was the daddest joke I've ever made. I have now fully entered my dad phase. Allie, tell us about your moment before.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, my moment before started in my undergraduate program. I was studying device theater, which we all know is a hop, skip, and a jump away from immersive. And my friend went to go see Then She Fell, and he was like, he's obsessed with Alice in Wonderland, and he was like, you have to see this. So I did see it. Of course, I fell in love, took everyone I knew to go see it, went to go see it with that friend. He's still my creative partner today. And then I decided to go to London to do a master's degree in contemporary performance, specializing in immersive. And then when I got back, I think I answered a call for writers. And I remember speaking with Catherine, and I had sent this like writing sample of a review I had done on this Broadway show that was awful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I forget what it was. It was some like country thing.
Yeah.
That totally had nothing to do with immersive work. And Catherine was like, okay, like go do a trial review. And it was some weird 3/4 thrust show that was attempting to be immersive. And that's where it all started. And that was in 2017. So if that helps you with your eras math, maybe I'm dating myself, but
yeah, no, I think it, yeah. Like I can't remember if it was like 2017 or 2018 when we poached Kevin. But it's 2018. So yeah, Kevin's like 2018 in the chat. So yeah, Allie's seniority. So I saved the longest serving for last. Y'all, this is an intervention. No.
I was going to say long may she reign, but to each their own.
No, it's an intervention for all of us. But no, it's true. It's like, it's great. And it's been wonderful. Like we've been really blessed with the New York team and its composition. And I was really happy when we got to like elevate you to the curator status. And in something, Catherine's come up twice in this. And and Catherine was on, was that last week's episode now?
Yes.
That was literally last week's episode. Catherine was on last week's episode. And the thing is like, why isn't Catherine here right now? It's because we had to get special dispensation for her to be on the show from her bosses, because she works for a game studio doing VR stuff at Meta. And so there's a lot of hoops we got to go through. Specifically, there's a lot of hoops Catherine has to go through in order to like hop on the show. And we play that card when it's absolutely critical. But if anyone thinks that we're not talking to Catherine all the time, like, no, we are. She's not doing a lick of work for us. Let's be very clear about that. But her input is always valued, and she's a big part of the team in spirit. And then on the Institute side, she's a big part of the team in practice. But that's why we haven't gotten a chance to like hear as much from Catherine over the time. Parker, you can say things and not just put them in the chat. You can jump in with the quips. What was that quip?
I have to keep reminding myself the podcast is an audio medium. But I said she's not even a friend of the show. She's a godparent of the show.
Yes, that is very, very true. All right. Yeah. Half the stuff y'all are always in the chat, like clicking away, and I'm like, just say it. Just say it. Say it in the show.
The chat is so good, Noah. I will never give up the chat. I love the chat.
There's a fair few creators we can blame for this, for their immersive Zoom productions. We are trained to use the chat.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That's very, very, very true. Makes me think of how active the little cinema digital chats get whenever there was like a premiere show. And it'd be particularly weird because like there'd be all kinds of people, like during pandemic, they'd be doing a premiere and like you'd see incredibly famous people just in the chat streaming by real time. It was really, really wild. I'm trying to think of, oh God, there was someone else. It's like, I can't believe this person's in here, and I can see their face right now, but like I'm blanking on.
It wasn't it the Snowpiercer? You did Snowpiercer, and I think it was Jennifer Connelly, right? Or
no.
that.
On Snowpiercer, I think Daveed Diggs was running around, and like that
That's
was a little bit wild. And like, oh yeah, Allie, who did you see?
Neil Patrick Harris at Eschaton.
Yes. Oh my God. I was going to use that as my entryway thing, but I think, well, hold on, not Eschaton. I traded a lobster with him at Queen of the Night, and it was like the most bizarre experience. Yeah, that was great.
Neil's a huge fan of all this stuff, and I don't know if any of you tracked, like, he just had his 50th birthday celebration, and like 50 days of like an ARG was done for him. And it was done by some of, like, you know, some pretty heavy ARG designer folks, and it was like his husband got him it as a present, and like it even bled into like The View or something. He was on The View or something like The View, one of those, the Day Show or something, one of those morning shows, and like he got one of his clues then. Just really, really over the top, next level of the game type stuff. All right, so we know Neil Patrick Harris was having a birthday. That's one of the things that's trending right now. What else? What else is going on here in Immersive Land? Because we have these conversations all the time. This is one of those times we get to like sort of perform the conversation for everybody, but also we haven't gathered everyone in one chat room like this in a while. So I kind of want to get a sense of what's on everyone's mind about where the state of things are.
I think it's kind of weird. Maybe a launching point is, and you wrote a piece kind of about it, is I think closing of the Burnt City and Star Cruiser seem to be like kind of the major like touch points, I think, for everybody, and kind of like where do we go next? That kind of these kind of institutional seeming shows are not going to be around in a few months.
What I think is interesting about that, bringing that up, Kevin, to maybe start this conversation off, is too, and it's in many ways, is the Burnt City and the Galactic Star Cruiser, I think, represent on a very massive, very corporate level, but nevertheless are examples of like the dream that we've kind of do talk about amongst ourselves in regards to immersive experiences in a very general sense, being part of the lexicon and the everyday awareness of the general public. And it happened. They were going, and then due to the same corporate elements that lifted them up, they're probably maybe going away. I don't know as many of the specifics of the Burnt City, but just Google Galactic Star Cruiser and everyone will be caught up to speed. And so I think it's kind of fascinating that we got there and then it happened and it was wonderful. And then it's like over, kind of like in that very kind of traditional like LARP or like RPG hero journey. Like we did it. It happened. And now it's like whatever, you know. And I find myself thinking about it too in regards to their closure, and not sure where that leaves us.
Leah's
I don't know. I think it leaves us with the reality of happily ever after, which is to say it's not one big peak forever and ever. So we've now seen some giant proofs. And I think what we're going to start seeing is stuff really integrated across all sorts of platforms and mediums. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more small immersive elements in restaurants. I think Laura has some experiences there recently. I know that we've got a few music festivals like Electric Zoo coming up that are incorporating immersive stages. The Boston Museum of Science just had a huge and first gathering of digital and immersive artists, and it was really just sort of an almost a debutante-esque coming out party for these artists to introduce them to people in the community, because we really don't have a huge immersive community. But I think getting stuff like Sleep No More that has been so successful for so long, and now these bigger institutions that are maybe closing down some of their stuff, is showing other people how other business owners, other sector as how they can incorporate immersive in ways that are also pretty effective.
That's definitely one line I think I want us to like ply into and explore as we continue to talk here today. I think another critical thing is like these two are closing down for in some ways for like different but same reasons in some senses. So with Burnt City, we know that Punch Drunk has that location like on a long lease, and that is their laboratory. And they want to make new work. And they are a theater company, and they're interested in exploring new things. And that show I think it saw more people than The Drowned Man ever did. And it feels like for them, it did what it needed to do. It ran its course. And as a creative entity, Felix has been talking for a while about no longer being interested in the mask show, right? The Punch Drunk signature, put the audience in a mask, have them go around. So I think part of the whole shock of, it's closing, some of that is similar to what here in LA we get when a creator would be like, I've done as much of show X that I've wanted to do. I want to move on. I think Star Cruiser, what's fascinating, and something we did a huge episode last week, but we didn't get into some of the business side of it. A thing that we learned on our final night on the cruise, we were talking to this guy from Montreal, who it was his second time on board. He had gone just a few months before and then like managed to like find a berth, sort of like the way Catherine found a berth. He found a spot because he loved it so much the first time that he was like, it's closing. I have to go back. I have to go back before it's gone forever. And he told us that they had done no international advertising. None. Everyone who hasn't heard this yet on the call is looking shocked. It's true. And the only way to book a berth was to call a US-based number. I can't even remember if it was like a toll-free one, right? So the booking process was opaque. The marketing effort sort of feels like they gave up, right? They had a legendarily bad rollout with videos so bad that they pulled them from YouTube and then got ridiculed for pulling them on YouTube. And I never saw those videos, but from everything I heard, like they were really bad because it was the old playbook. And that for me highlights the issue that experiential of any form has and always will have, which is the proof of this stuff being good is in the experiencing of it. And once you're initiated, once you know what the possibilities are, it becomes easy to imagine what another experience like this would be. But until you're on the other side of it, you can imagine, but you won't quite understand what the value of it all is. And this is something that everyone talks about all the time, about how it's hard to sell this stuff. And the thing I find myself disappointed in the case of Star Cruiser is that I was really hoping that a company the size of Disney, with the resources and the marketing savvy that they have or had at least, pre the current era of budget cuts, that they were going to be the ones to crack the nut on how to sell this to people who didn't know what it was. And they didn't. They didn't manage to. And it's been interesting to see as people go back or are desperate to get back on board, do whatever they can, and the things sell out because of that, that I think what we see at the end of Star Cruiser's lifespan is a picture of what it would have been 2-3 years from now, which is people returning for their third time, friend groups returning, people leaning harder into LARPing, leaning harder into playing with each other and not just playing with the other characters, right? Passengers finding they can do this game. That's something I think we would have seen in year 3 and year 4 start to emerge to the point where it would have been a rather steady state. Still not necessarily the numbers that a company the size of Disney wants to see, but almost certainly a success by any other company's measurement, particularly a smaller company. And yeah, like it's sort of, we often find these moments where something was made and it's really, really ahead of the curve. I was reading today about the Trocadero at Piccadilly Circus, I think, in London back in like the 80s and 90s, which at one point was like owned by Pepsi. And in like, oh man, in like the early 90s, let me see if I get this was actually something I saw on Blue Sky. It's like the most incredible thing I saw on Blue Sky yet so far, period. I can't take it out for whatever reason. Oh, because I'm not in replies. Oh, it's just not there. Anyway, the point is, there was a fully functional theatrical with actors branded Aliens War experience in like the 90s, like in the basement of the Trocadero. And like you went in and there were colonial Marines and there were guys in alien suits, and it felt like you were going down the corridors, and they had all these special effects to give you a full sort of alien haunted house thing. And then, like most things in London, it failed out because it flooded. And and it flooded, and then it went away and never quite came back as it was originally intended, like sort of non-branded. Oh, that's the thing. I was looking on Threads and not Blue Sky. That's why I couldn't find it. That's the world we live in right now. But that was like the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. You know, something that was that charged. Like these things are cyclical.
Well, what I think is very interesting is regards to like Noah mentioning, like Disney coming in to be the one to crack the nut. And I think in this maybe new era, in this moment of transition, rather than ending, it's a moment of transitioning from before to after to something new. I've been thinking a lot about, because for my day job, I work in a financial industry, and I think as a community of artists in general, and I'm talking about just traditional theater, movies, all of it, radio, anything that entertains the general public. I think for a long time there's been a reliance, or whether we've looked up to and idolized the business as knowing what they're doing. And I think right now, with a lot of headlines and the state of the world as it is, and my time in 10 years in a financial business and sector, they don't know what's going on. They have very little idea, and it takes also very little to wow them. And I think it's been very fascinating to hear you talk about that, Noah, and also going back to the next stage. I feel like there was a lot of conversations and a lot of desire to be part of conversations that were about business. I feel like a lot of the sessions where it was about, the summer camp experience, and then the marketing one that Kevin, I know you not audited, but you were in the room for and listened. But that, like, we had an overflow room. People really wanted to like dig in and learn that stuff. And so I think it's just kind of fascinating in this moment that I think this is our opportunity to continue to grow as artists and as a community, but in a very different way, to get off the stage, to get out of the magic circle, and to learn how to support it in a new way.
And I think going back to the next stage, that was Mr. and Mischief's session. During that it was how do you bridge the creative and the business to like put on a successful show, but also to get people to come to your successful show and fund the show and keep people paid and all these different aspects. So it seems like it's something that probably a lot of people struggle with, because it seems like people that come to Immersive on the creator side are on the more creative side rather than that business side. And it's like, how do you bridge that and kind of get the marketing in, get all these things to make sense to people that might not be fully bought into the concept of immersive theater? And I think that's what we always come back to, or I come back to a lot, is how do you simplify this? And I think at its core, Star Cruiser is like kind of simple to explain, but there's a lot of pieces, and it's like, is it a cruise? Is it immersive? Is it LARP? What is it? And like, how do you explain that in a clear way and get people on board? But even like smaller shows, like you just got to get the word out and like explain what your show's about to get people into the seats.
I think there's also some really interesting stuff that's happening that may not be what is predominantly in front of us. Talking about Punch Drunk and Disney and these real titans of the industry, and deservedly so. I think that so there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I really appreciated, Noah, your two recent op-eds, because I'm really worn out by the cynicism, and not that everyone is this way. There are loads of people who are incredibly positive and innovative and looking to keep moving forward, and aren't getting bogged down in the cynicism and negativity. I am really interested in following more of these like big luxury brands. We've talked about this a little bit before. It's definitely something that I'm deeply invested in, because when we're talking about the business side and like where is their funding and who is continuing or starting to throw money behind big productions. And so whether it's the two Louis Vuitton productions, whether it's Veuve Clicquot's Solaire Culture, whether it's this new On the Wings of Hermes, I mean, it was already in, all three of those have had global tours. And they're continuing to put a lot of money behind it. There was Hermes had the big one night only, like sort of Broadway-esque musical production that they did for their big flagship boutique that opened, I think it was last summer in New York. And so I think that's really interesting to kind of keep track of. Hopefully not everyone rolls their eyes at this next thing, although totally fair if you do. But at least with this group, because I've been such a big proponent of this, I still feel like I'm kind of swimming against the tide around the projected art experiences, and saw the David Hockney collaboration in London. I think it's totally an evolution of the form. And with some of these things,
I mean, just to clarify, you mean the Hockney's an evolution of that form?
Yeah, right. So with the projected art experiences, I think that there have been some critics that have said like either they're just pretty, they're superficial, there's no depth, there's no emotional narrative or heart. I think in some cases that's true, or that's true at least to a degree. There's also been a range of production quality. That's all fair. These are great discussions to have. We should be having them. But there are some people that don't even think that that form should exist. And really, at the end of the day, if it is a trend, people will vote with their wallets and it will die out. My opinion certainly doesn't matter in that case. But I think that we are continuing to see people going to those with good reason. And now there is what I think is an evolution of the form. And I'll be writing about that shortly. And the third thing I want to throw out is a recent trip to Mary Shelley's House of Frankenstein, which is an immersive museum in Bath, England. And I think to Kevin's point, we're seeing places, I know there's debate around, or there's at least conversation around immersive, and feeling that that term isn't clearly defined. There isn't industry standard in relation to what does that actually mean? What is the definition of immersive and how is it being used? I'm a lot less concerned with that. I think, again, it's a worthy discussion to have, but I think we can also afford some grace to different creators and people that are trying to test out new things. And this is not a slick production, but this was financed in large part by the local people of Bath. And it is delightful. I thought they did so many things well. I learned so much. I have talked about it. I have read up on it. It does everything that we want immersive and experiential to do. I've continued to think about it. I have very strong memories. It continues to live with me. And was it a really high end in the way that we typically talk about some of this stuff? Was it like incredibly high end, high production value? No. Is it really well done, especially for where it is and what it's about and the relationship that Mary Shelley has to Bath or had to Bath? 100%. And I'm hoping that we're going to continue to see more of that. And so I think those are three big touch points that I think are good indicators of really positive movement in the industry.
Let's get over to Leah and then to Allie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Laura, you were saying all of that so much better than I think I was trying to say in my brain earlier. But there are two things that I'm noticing that I wanted to hit on there. One is the indie creator, the town creator, people creating things for their smaller communities. And in Boston at the Museum of Science at this most recent event, Waveforms, that's exactly what I was seeing. And one of the interesting things I was seeing there, Laura, you'll be happy to know, is some really innovative light and projection art exhibits. Not full immersive Van Gogh, but we were looking at a bunch of indie stuff both on the IMAX screen and in the planetarium. And what I was noticing was how the relationship between the audience or the viewers of this art and the art shifted so dramatically. And I think there's just so much room for artists to play with ritual spaces, which is something that Masari Studio was dealing with. The way that we were all sat around in the planetarium facing each other, focused up on this digital art that was being projected around us, we weren't there to be entertained. This was not a Pink Floyd show. We were there for an experience. And what it really felt like was like our attention was sustaining the art in the middle. And if one of us were to maybe break attention or look away, something would change. And this had a lot to do with how the sound was affecting the imagery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're proving now that you kind of had to be there. It's hard to talk about what these are to get people in the door. The other thing that I wanted, like on the other end of the spectrum, have you guys seen this news about Virgin Voyages lately?
No.
Okay, so this is great. This is Virgin cruise ships. It's a cruise. That's in quotation marks all it is. But they're launching a cruise this year with 5 new acts, and I think 3 of them, at least 3, are fully immersive. One is Persephone by House of Yes. So now we're seeing, a New York institution coming through and creating an immersive party for a cruise audience. Another is called Lola's Library. This is a cocktail party and immersive cabaret. And the final is Supper Club series featuring Another Rose. And guys, this is produced by Randy Weiner of Sleep No More, Queen of the Night. So I think when we're talking about how do we bring people into immersive, one of the things that's going to start happening is people are going to be having these immersive experiences without necessarily knowing that that's what they're in for. They're going to be coming to the Louis Vuitton store, or they're going to be coming on a Virgin cruise. And then once they're in there, in that space, it's kind of up to us to say, and by the way, did you know? Like, surprise, it was immersive all along, and now you know what this is, and let's continue this journey together.
I want to shoot over to Allie for a second, but it's the cruise thing is definitely interesting. And we had Monica Miklas on talking about her work at RWS, and it's not the Virgin setup from what I know, but she's been working on immersive entertainment on the cruise ships as well, right? Like this is there's some other cruise lines who are also exploring this, so it's moved into a broader, wider world. It's like, I very much want to pitch this, by the way. Yeah, well, we can see. I don't know. We'll find out. We're still like influential people listen to this show, but like cruise level influential. I don't know. Maybe you happen to work for Virgin Voyages and you listen to the show, just know that Leah would like to come and
Leah's at the dock, bag is packed, ready to go.
I will write about it like nobody's business. I will let the people know that this is immersive.
Now we're not guaranteeing a positive review, but you will get reviewed.
I can guarantee an interesting review. How about that?
That I can guarantee. Allie, you've been chomping at the bit for a hot minute here, so
there's so much to say. But I think what Leah was just saying about like when we're bringing immersive into these spaces where like maybe the like non-immersive Muggle folk might be, it is kind of like I think of it like teaching a little bit, where sometimes when I was a teacher, my students didn't know what the lesson was until we got to the end of it. And that's the craft of teaching. Like they're experiencing the learning and then they realize, oh, I see what you did there. It's a little bit like that. But in this whole conversation, I've been thinking about a couple of things which I think about when I'm assessing an immersive production, and keeping in mind my beat is more, immersive theater than some of the other stuff. But the first question, like in terms of, especially with these larger commercial productions, like the Star Wars thing and Burnt City, the first question I ask is it accessible? Because it's usually not. Either it's not accessible price-wise, or it's not physically accessible, or if it is both of those things, then perhaps it's not accessible in the sense that someone can buy in easily. And I'm thinking, I just saw the Burnt City last week, and I didn't like it, which is controversial, I'm sure. But I can understand how that production would be very frustrating to someone who didn't get a one-on-one and then had no sort of sense of what to do and how to be. And it was a very hard environment to be in, to be frank.
Interesting. I've known other people who are theater people, but not immersive people, who did not like it. But you're the first immersive person I've known who's like, wasn't my bag. And your analysis of lack of one-on-one, or just like what the entry point to it was. Also, I think it might be a little like Greek mythology is a little harder than, Shakespeare even, which seems counterintuitive, but you got to be way farther in your electives on Greek mythology.
Well, that's also interesting, though. From an American point of view, that's probably correct. But everything I've heard about British,
Shelley's talked about that. Yeah. I think the Greeks it's as big a part of like the traditional learning culture in those formative years as Shakespeare.
I mean, I have no point of reference because I dived into Edith Hamilton's mythology when I was in like middle school. So like, but I'm a freak. So I don't know what people don't know.
I will say that as an American, I felt like the on-ramp through Greek mythology was easier, more resonant, more interesting than Shakespeare. So for what that's worth.
And then
there's also something to be said, and I am willing to take all of the flack and shame that comes with my saying of this, but I'm a little bit younger, I think, than other folks in the podcast by at least a couple of years, and I am sort of at the very old end of the Percy Jackson generation, so just looking at about Greek mythology from I know I'm sorry, I apologize for bringing all of that up just now.
Backdoor brag on your age.
No.
I only know about Percy Jackson because of like the trade mags and like them always trying to remake it. So like that's my full experience, is whatever is going on in Variety.
When it comes to Americans and people in general, like having enough of a knowledge about Greek mythology to easily access, and I haven't seen the Burnt City, but I do know that it is about Greek mythology. So when it comes to having the knowledge to access a piece like that, I think there is more of a baseline understanding in certain groups, the groups being, British school kids who learn about this like you guys were talking about, or, you know, anyone who's read the Percy Jackson series. Not to say that it's only like people in my demographic that have. Obviously anybody can, they're just books, but culturally,
trying to turn this into a Percy Jackson podcast, Parker?
No, I'm not. I am not trying to be like a Percy Jackson fan.
What do they call Percy Jackson fans?
She's really worried about offending the old people. That's all.
Okay, yeah.
Those old people who read Harry Potter. You know, those those
geriatric millennials who, the series which cannot be named, and you can't even make that joke because it contains itself like some kind of horrible Ouroboros.
Wow, that didn't spark anything.
And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to have different opinions. I will say though that I do know a fair amount of Greek mythology, and I still found it hard to buy in. I didn't feel particularly invited or onboarded or included. And that's the big thing that I'm looking for in immersive work. And I write about this a lot in my scholarly work. Like, it's that bonus part other than the site specificness or the participation or the curated environment. It's that extra thing that you're treating the audience in a different way, right? And I felt the same way that I felt watching
the invitation.
You know,
the invitation is so critical, right? Yeah. Like the invitation that you get, that I got at Then She Fell. If it wasn't for that moment of invitation, right? You know, would you like to have some tea? We wouldn't be talking right now. It's such a special moment. I know Leah wants to jump in, but I also want to see if everyone else, while Leah's jumping in, think about what your invitation was. What was the thing that invited you into immersive?
Man, how can I have two thoughts at once, Noah? This is rough.
Adult ADHD. Come on, we know the answer, and the answer, and the answer, and the answer. Yeah.
Okay, I got this. So I wonder, Allie, because I completely agree with you that the invitation is so important, but I wonder if there are different shows that are meant to invite you in different ways. And I always got the feeling that The Burnt City was meant to be a show that was supposed to unfold over multiple visits, especially once they started bringing... Accessible. Well, especially once they started bringing the tickets down to £25, and they were making a good number of tickets available for locals for cheap.
Yeah,
regularly. And I think that was a large, in my opinion, I think that was part of the intent for that show. But that's really rough, especially for those of us who, can go once or live far away or are splurging to get a very expensive ticket.
Kevin.
I'll just say really quickly, the second point that I didn't talk about yet is, who is this for? And did you make that clear? Because if that's who the Burnt City was for, then I shouldn't have been there, you know?
Let's come back if we got the time.
That's a great point.
You know, we got 10 minutes left, but we got the time coming back to who is this for. But Kevin.
Yeah, so I don't want to turn it into a Burnt City podcast, but I actually found it easier to follow the smaller stories throughout the Burnt City than it is in Sleep No More, which is you're not chasing people up and down the hotel. There's a lot of kind of little stories that happen throughout the Burnt City. But I think that also gets back to the point about accessibility. Those are easier to find if you're able to make multiple trips. And I think that gets into things of cost, like how much time can you afford to spend going and getting to a show, especially one that's in London? How much time do you have to can you make multiple repeat visits, and how many can you make? I think that's something we get into. It's how do you learn a show? And maybe that's even that point you're making earlier about Star Cruiser. Noah, is that he came back and he kind of knew what he wanted to do. And I think that's something that kind of does happen in immersive, is how do you learn the show, and how accessible is it if you have to go a couple of times to figure out how to play in that specific world?
One of the things about Star Cruiser is it's clear they're obsessed with the idea this might be someone's one shot. And so they want to give you a really clear, good experience on the one shot. And indeed, the people, particularly the influencers who tried to do it all because it won't support doing it all, they had way less fun because they were trying to hoard all the experience. The cat from Montreal, he had the interesting experience of he came fully in costume, cosplay mode, and then he's dressed in Director Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn's outfit from Rogue One, and then the characters were all how'd you get that uniform? Did you steal it from someone? And in that moment, he realized, he's like, oh, I should have had a character. And he's like, I'm a role player. I know better. I amateur houred it. So I knew I wanted to come back with my character pre-planned, like that there was an invitation to go deep if I wanted to.
I would say really even quick. I went, because when I was for the next stage, I took the opportunity to go to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. And Noah, I took your advice to just, even though I didn't really engage with anyone, I made a conscious decision that I was a worker from the Bespin Mining Corporation on vacation visiting places in the Outer Rim. I had a shirt that said the Petronaki Arena. Deep cuts for all three of you out there. And it just meant a lot more to me to walk around that space, to think that I had known about this and I had been working, and this was like a respite from my daily life. And it affected no one around me. And I told the friend I went with, but it just elevated the experience internally for me so much.
Oh man, Patrick, though, it did affect people around you, because when everybody has that mindset, I think you feel it when other people are living in that universe fully and not just there as tourists. So no surprise, you guys are you're all secret LARPers.
Yeah. Oh, not even all that secret. It's it's lifestyle LARPers. That's a whole other thing. This notion that Allie brought up, and there's stuff going on in the chat I'm going to ignore for the second, because I'm interested in this idea of, particularly as we get into our last 5 minutes, who is it for? And Parker's got something, and hopefully it is on that topic.
Yeah, I think the question of who is it for is actually a part of the accessibility question, because if something is not for me, inherently it's not going to be built to be accessible for me in the way of buy-in or barrier to entry or all of these lovely topics that Allie was talking about. And I'm going to talk about myself for a minute here, which is that I don't think Sleep No More was for me. I've seen the show, and it really did feel like a show for first-time experiencers. A lot of people talk about Sleep No More being their entry into immersive, but because I saw it 3-4 years after I'd already been involved, to me it was, oh, is this it? Is this what everybody's been talking up and talking about? Because at that point I was used to and comfortable with a lot of the things that seemed amazing to a newcomer's eyes. And that's not to say, obviously, that Sleep No More is not amazing and was revolutionary and all these things and incredible for a first timer, but it was not for me. And so I did not get out of it what I think I was intended to get out of it, which to me is a concept of accessibility. I was not able to access the intended experience from it.
Laura's got a bit.
I'm just actually going to throw this out. Maybe this is something for a conversation at a different time, but I think it is also interesting when we talk about who is this for, and try to just, as a thought exercise, try to consider it from a different sector within the experiential industry. So what I'm referring to specifically, again, is around installation art, which doesn't necessarily have performance. There may be interactivity, there may be absolutely none. And so an artist is making something without, how do I say this? Like, it's not that I think that artists don't have a clear vision. It's not that I think that they don't anticipate how the messaging within their art, whether that's very explicit, whether it's more abstract, might resonate with certain people, but I think it's a different approach. And I think it's interesting to consider, how does that look if we kind of put that hat on something like immersive theater? Do we start to ask new questions, or do we start to look at that in a slightly different way? Because I also think we all now have so much collectively institutional knowledge, and now we have different biases. And I mean, there's, you know, I'm challenging Allie to an arm wrestle in the chat. Like, I think it's also good to sometimes take a step back and be like, let's have this conversation, trying to look at it through a different lens under the experiential umbrella.
Well, let me also posit, and this is cruel to do because of everyone's commitments. We got 2 minutes left. Let me posit this, that one of the things we find, particularly in our current internet age, which is the dominant means of communication, is that everyone tries to make everything for everybody else, but then will often find themselves, when they are trying to address like a particular community, that other folks come in and just completely misinterpret what's going on, right? Not everything has to be for everybody, but one should know and be marketing intelligently and signaling intelligently who and what these things are for. The example I got from the internet, you know, there's some stuff brewing right now because there's a country western artist who covered Fast Car, which I'm currently blanking on the name of the original artist, which is unfortunate because Tracy Chapman, right? Thank you, Parker. Covered Tracy Chapman's Fast Car, which is like a standard from the 90s, right? You know, like the second someone says it, you start hearing the song. And then there was this article, this very thoughtful article, maybe New York Times or maybe the Post or something, that was about how do Black artists feel about the fact that this song is, you know, becoming like this, you know, because is topping the country charts when Black artists do not have any access to the country music world in any real measurable way. And then you had, you know, your typical white centrist Twitter opinion people complaining about an article about like, well, why do we got to play the race card? And it's like, that article wasn't for those white dudes, right? That article was Black artists talking to Black artists about, hey, how do we feel about this? Is this weird? And it's a little weird, but it's kind of good. It's kind of like sad and like bittersweet and interesting all at the same time. And that's not a conversation for white people. Like, you can observe it and learn something maybe, but like, they're not talking to you. There can be a piece of art where it's like, they're not talking to you. This isn't for you. Doesn't mean you can't show up and observe. And it does get interesting when we get into experiential because of the participatory bias. What does it mean to show up to a piece that is not for you? And how are you as an audience member, you know, what then is your role there? Which is, you know, where we got to leave things. Because we've come to the end of the hour we promised ourselves, right? Those are the questions ahead of us as everything. Allie's saying sorry to be a menace in the thing. Well, obviously, we all got to get together on the more often. And luckily, as you know from the Slack, that Parker and I are planning some of that. So maybe we'll pick up that question soon enough. And we'll definitely do a Burnt City retrospective. I'm just literally reading what's going on in the chat and just telling everyone, like, thank you for making commitments in the chat, which I can now share with the audience, who will then now ask me, hey, where'd that episode where you guys are supposed to talk about this is at? And I'll just say, like, well, talk to everyone's schedules, because it is hard to coordinate, you know, 7 people. Before we let Parker go, because we have to, anyone got anything else, anything they're looking forward to, want to point out, like something for everyone to keep their eye on as we move into the back end or the final part of 2023? Yes, this is 2023. Anyone got anything? Everyone's. I'm going to cut this.
Yeah, I guess I will say just to actually 2 things. One, very simply, I think also it's about connectivity and like build, like just thinking about in regards to also who is this for is also how are they connecting? And I think I see that a lot because with my experience, with my work here at NoPro, doing a lot of more of the remote stuff, which is at-home boxes, VR experiences, phone stuff like that. In many of those meetings, the mediums in regards to it, it's about how these people are interacting, whether there's a performer there, whether not, whether there's miles in separation like that. So I think just being mindful of that in the form at large, I think would be kind of really good and helpful. And then the second thing is, I want everyone to know I do have interests other than Star Wars. Not many, but I do have a few. I feel like all I've talked about is Star Wars on this podcast.
Oh, come on, Patrick. Everyone knows you like VR too.
Yeah, and but I'm hard pressed to say I love Star Vader Immortal. That experience is still probably one of the better ones.
Oh my goodness! Man. All right. Well, obviously we got to do this more often. We've fallen out of practice, and yet look at us. We got right into it. We could go on for another hour, but we also can't. So I want to thank Kevin and Leah and Parker and Laura and Allie and Patrick. I know everyone's going to get a little frustrated, like, but we just got into it. Well, pick it up in the Discord with each other and with us. And who knows, maybe, you know what we should do? Not even an episode. We should take, what's the question? What was the one, like the who's this for? We should have that who's it for discussion in the Discord, like actively. We should get everyone back together in voice chat mode, and we'll open it up to the Patreon audience as well. So there, that's a solve. Parker, let's figure out when we're going to do that. All right. Thank you all. Once again, I want to thank Allie and Kevin and Patrick and Leah and Laura and Parker all for being on the show this week. And I did the rant at the start, so no more. Plenty of fun stuff. Fun interviews are being scheduled. Like I mentioned, we got Curtis Hickman coming up. We've got Nick Fortuno talking with Lance Weiler about Where There's Smoke. That one's coming up. There's some talk out of Austin. There's just a bunch of stuff. Bunch of stuff is going on, and yeah, there you go. No more for you today. Come back next week. I'm all out of podcast. The associate producer of this podcast is Parker Sela. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. And hey, you know what? Special thanks to you for listening. Especially those of you who have listened to like all 400 episodes. You wild. If you've listened to all 400 episodes, write me, noah@noproscenium.com, and just say, I've listened. I just want to know. I really do. I'm serious. Even if if you think that I know that, you know what I mean? Like, don't just assume. Tell me that you've listened to all of them. I want to know who has. Deeply curious about that. Watch nobody write. I'll be so sad. I'm Noah Nelson, and until next time, I'll see you at the show.